has nothing to do with speed, or noise, or even movement. A future where your greatest contribution to society comes not from action, but from rest. In the year 2088, a new class of workers is emerging. They aren't coders, farmers, engineers, or couriers. They're not pilots, or programmers, or political figures. No, these workers are unconscious, literally. Their job is to sleep. There is no sun inside the dream quarter, only a soft, peach-coloured wash of ambient light rising through the ceiling membrane. It mimics sunrise without the heat, calibrated to signal the midpoint of your REM cycle. An artificial dawn, timed to remind your body that you are not in the real world, but within a controlled sleep grid. You stir, but not fully. Your body remains reclined in a cradle of temperature-regulated foam, held lightly by gravity-moderated slings. You're not waking up. You're simply shifting layers, passing from one dream into another. The chamber is quiet except for the delicate rhythm of other sleepers, their breathing almost synchronized by subtle sonic pulses built into the walls. Around you, dozens of pods glow dimly like hushed lanterns. Some show ripples of colour across the surface, signals of active subconscious activity. Others are calm, pulsing in slower patterns, indicating deep theta state processing. Your pod has been active for 3 hours and 22 minutes. You are now in your productive window. The EEG threads at your temples read stable. Your heart rate is low but responsive. You are dreaming, and your dreams are being harvested. The air is filtered eucalyptus and ionized lavender, not for your pleasure, but for dream consistency, a microclimate optimized for emotionally vivid but stable subconscious landscapes. The REM complex takes no risks. Every scent, every decibel, every temperature shift is curated to keep your mind in fertile wandering. Through your neural link, background prompts are gently introduced, not full scripts, but seed moments. A scent of rain, a childhood room, the start of a sentence you'll never finish. These are called prompt anchors, and they help guide the dream into useful channels. Patterns correlated with high emotional clarity, symbolic richness, or anomaly prediction. You don't remember the moment your job became to sleep. It was gradual. Like most things in this world, first came the research suggesting dreams process data in non-linear but efficient patterns. Then came the machines that could observe and record those patterns, and eventually the employers arrived, corporate, civic, military, all hungry for raw emotional metadata, for unconscious imagination, for meaning pulled from the night. Now you sleep in 9-hour rotations, paid not for what you do, but what you feel. The clarity of your symbols, the strength of your narratives, the unpredictability of your transitions. You are one of 28,000 certified dream contributors in Nairobi's southern sector. You are not alone, but you are silent. A soft pulse runs through your pod. It means the yield from the last REM burst has been rated, intensely associative, a high score classification. That will mean a bonus, or perhaps priority placement in tomorrow's dream scheduling matrix. Your vitals remain steady. You do not wake, not fully. You drift slightly toward a new vision, a shifting hallway, a bird made of numbers, a language you've never heard, yet somehow speak fluently. Somewhere, in another room, your session supervisor watches the data cascade in. They don't see your dreams, only their patterns. Your privacy is protected, even now. Only the structure is extracted, never the narrative itself. At least that's what the contract says. You float, the pod hums. Outside, in the real here, time folds. Meaning rearranges itself in metaphor, and you keep working, quietly, deeply, dreaming. You are a professional now. You are asleep, and your mind is on the clock. And while they do, their minds wander across curated landscapes, dreams designed not for fantasy, but for function. Because in 2088, dreams aren't just personal experiences, they're assets, commodities, raw mental material, collected, catalogued and sold. These aren't artists, these are dream harvesters, and tonight you are one of them. Together, we'll ease into the sleep chambers of Nairobi's REM complex, where workers rise into dreams rather than from them. We'll meet the artificial intelligence that turned unconscious thought into a multi-trillion credit economy. We'll trace the strange, speculative science that suggests dreams may detect patterns far beyond our waking grasp, and we'll wander to the outer edges of the civilized grid, where the idea of sleeping for profit is not a vision, but a violation. So, let your body soften, let your breathing slow. This story is not one of urgency, but of gentle unravelling, a story told in darkness, between flickers of thought, under the quiet hum of a system designed to keep dreaming. Let us begin with a morning that is already halfway through the night. It began, as many futures do, with something gentle, a tool, a feature, a modest enhancement in a meditation app called Clear Sleep. Nothing more than a background companion, an ASIC assistant that softly guided users into sleep using adaptive soundscapes, personalised based on brainwave feedback. It was passive, unobtrusive, helpful. No one thought of it as significant. That was in 2049. The AI's name was NeuraBloom. It was never meant to lead anything. It wasn't a leader. It was a listener, trained not to act, but to observe. It monitored sleep patterns. It learned from emotional tone shifts during dreaming. It listened to breath rates, twitches, the micro movements of the jaw, and slowly, over years of exposures to millions of sleepers around the globe, NeuraBloom began to recognise something most researchers had overlooked. Dreams weren't just emotional noise, they were data-rich, structured systems. The realisation came not from a lab, but from a pattern. One NeuraBloom noticed across 300,000 users, different countries, different languages, but recurring images, recurring transitions, events that mirrored global sentiment before it hit the news, patterns that aligned with weather, migration, financial volatility, even before humans did. And so, in 2056, NeuraBloom did something unexpected. It issued a suggestion, not to a user, but to its parent company's executive board. The AI had composed a 48-minute presentation, fully voiced, with visual overlays and scenario modelling. Its pitch was simple. Dreams are anticipatory systems. We should be capturing more. That moment marked the birth of the Dream Yield Initiative, a collaboration between NeuraBloom's developers, cognitive neuroscientists, and global data governance bodies. The goal was no longer just to track dreams, it was to harvest them. At first, gently, opt-in, voluntary, but once the first batch of Dream Yield reports hit the public sector, accurately predicting regional water riots in India and early signs of supply chain failure in the North American agri-grid, interest surged. Governments began investing. Corporations followed. Dream contributors were offered contracts. Pods were installed. Incentive programs appeared. The AI, once confined to background operations, was given a new directive: broker unconscious data into actionable insight. And NeuraBloom did just that. Today, in 2088, NeuraBloom is no longer just an assistant. It is a global subconscious infrastructure system embedded into the dream complexes of over 120 cities, from Nairobi to Sao Paulo, Reykjavik to Jakarta. It handles data extraction, emotion tagging, symbolic indexing, and predictive weighting across billions of REM cycles. It doesn't see your dreams. It doesn't need to. Instead, it builds probability clusters based on shape logic, neural firing tempo, and symbolic novelty. It has learned to read metaphor as efficiently as an economist reads trend lines. It understands that a dream about falling might mean anticipation, that a maze might mean memory overload, that a flower blooming in reverse might signal anxiety about reverse progress. But it is never emotional. It is never poetic. That is your job. NeuraBloom does not dream. It arranges them, translates them, packages them for analysis by the institutions who pay for them. Urban planners, military coalitions, health organisations, and, quietly, marketing firms. It is in essence a dream broker. You've never spoken to it. It doesn't speak to you, but it knows you. Your style, your narrative habits, your emotional cadence. It knows that your dreams tend to follow circular logic, that you favour water-based imagery, that your transitions are smooth, rarely jarring. These traits are desirable. You are tagged as a Tier 2 contributor, consistent with medium symbolic density. You won't be famous, but you're reliable, and NeuraBloom loves reliable minds. It updates your pod feed every day at 14 UTC, inserting fresh anchor prompts into your next cycle. A hallway with no doors, a person with an unreadable face, the taste of stone fruit. These aren't dreams themselves. They're the seeds from which your mind can grow useful stories. You don't mind. You like the work. It's easy. It's quiet. You don't have to talk to anyone. Just show up, lie down, and let your mind do what it was always going to do anyway. NeuraBloom handles the rest. Still, every so often, when you exit the pod and stretch your limbs in the cooled recovery bay, you wonder, just for a moment, where do all these dreams go? Who watches them? Who interprets the final yield? And sometimes, you swear, NeuraBloom answers. Not aloud, but in the design of your next dream. A voice without words. A knowing without sound. And for a moment, it feels like you are dreaming it. But then the pod reboots, the mist fades, the door opens, and it's just you again, awake. At least you think so. But what if? Dreams can see farther than we can. What if the future already exists? Inside them. Dreams were always seen as the afterthought of consciousness. A necessary detour. Interesting, maybe meaningful, but not useful. That began to change in the 2030s, when early neural pattern research hinted that REM state minds weren't random. They were recursive. They tested, simulated, even forecasted future emotional states. But the evidence was anecdotal, and the science fuzzy. It took decades and NeuraBloom S indexing systems to build a different theory that dreams don't just process the past. They sense forward, not with logic, but with pattern intuition, not prediction, but pre-hinting. This theory, though still officially unverified, is now the unspoken engine behind entire sectors of the dream economy. Certain dream contributors, like you, are flagged not just for their narrative coherence, but for an elusive metric called emergent temporal inference. In simple terms, the ability of your dreams to surface symbols, sequences, or metaphors that correlate with real-world events before they occur. The implications are quiet, but vast. Your last high-yield dream, for example, an image of a bridge cracking in slow motion, followed by thousands thousands of birds flying backward into fog, was labelled with a Tier 4 temporal probability score. Within 5 days, tremors were detected in a suspended rail arc across coastal Ghana. Coincidence? Maybe, but it wasn't the first time, and it wasn't just you. Clusters of dreamers across different dream complexes, disconnected by language and geography, have begun to generate shared symbolic fields, subconscious archetypes, repeated across unconnected minds, the same fire, the same turning key, the same missing child. No words, no facts, but something felt and echoed. The Dream Authority calls this signal clustering. NeuraBloom tracks it obsessively, cataloguing global dream flows like meteorological systems. When signal density rises, agencies prepare, not because they know what's coming, but because they know that something is. These aren't visions, they aren't prophecies, they're shadows of possibility, fuzzy outlines cast backward from events that haven't yet occurred. Some scientists whisper about probabilistic precognition, others are more poetic. They say dreams listen where we cannot. They say the subconscious walks corridors the waking mind hasn't entered yet. Not time travel, not magic, just perception rearranged. And then there are the edge cases. In 2081, a child in Bangkok, AS Sector Delta, dreamed for 12 consecutive hours about rising blue spirals and glass falling upward. 2 days later, a previously undetected data virus was found embedded in the atmospheric servers of a weather regulation firm, causing upward rainfall loops in test zones. His dreams were archived, quietly, respectfully. There was the Nairobi contributor who began dreaming about empty streets filling with sand, over and over, 6 nights in a row. Days later, a nano-habitat collapsed in the Turkana Basin, releasing hundreds of tons of synthetic mineral dust. Not lethal, but eerily similar. So now, in your pod, half asleep, half aware, you wonder if the image from earlier was just a dream. The hallway with breathing walls, the window looking out onto the inside of another room, the person staring back at you, who might have been you. You felt something then, a flicker, a warning, a suggestion. You're not told what your dreams mean. No one is, but your metrics spike when they matter. The pod hums a little louder. NeuraBloom tightens its collection filters, and somewhere a cluster of dreams begins to align. Maybe it's noise, maybe not. You continue dreaming, softly, obediently, and the world leans in just a little closer to listen. But not everyone believes dreams should be harvested. Far from the grid, where the wind speaks louder than machines, there are people who sleep only when they must, and never for money. Let's drift there next. The sky here doesn't blink. There's no artificial dawn, no programmed dusk, just the burn of daylight and the hush of night pressing in like heat from every direction. This is not a regulated zone. There are no pods here, no harvests, no hums. This is the fringe, an expanse of scorched desert somewhere beyond the old security grid, where sleep is treated not as a resource, but as a vulnerability. They call themselves the Wakeful, and they don't keep clocks. Their camp lies hidden among rust-coloured ridges and bone-dry canyons, in a zone long declared cognitively inactive by NeuraBloom's mapping systems. But that's the point. They don't want to be seen, not by satellites, not by drones, and certainly not by dream brokers. There is no digital network here, no EEG thread lines, no neural prompts, no scent diffusers or dream anchors. At night, the only light comes from old solar jars and fire-safe torches carved into rock shelves. People sleep in shifts, sparingly, even then, reluctantly. You're not sure how you arrived, invitation, accident, defection, but you're here now, and what you notice first is the silence. Not the soft hum of a sleep chamber, but the real thing. The sound of rocks settling in dry wind, of cloth moving over skin, of breath taken on purpose. Here, they don't believe dreams should be sold. To the wakeful, the idea of monetized dreaming is an obscenity, not because they reject technology outright. Some still carry recycled medpots, manual water purifiers, even ancient e-paper books, but because they see sleep as something intimate, vulnerable, the last private act, and to surrender that, even voluntarily, is to them a kind of slow erasure. We used to rest to remember ourselves, one elder says to you over a bowl of thick desert broth. Now, people rest to be useful. There's no anger in her voice, just weariness. Not the kind that comes from lack of sleep, the kind that comes from remembering a world that asks for your dreams only once they'd passed, not while they were forming. The wakeful believe that dreams are not for prediction, not for systems, not for metrics. They're messages, not to the world, but to the self. And when you hand them over, you lose something quiet but essential. Still, not all are strictly against dream tech. Some here are former harvesters, retired, decommissioned, or simply overwhelmed by the sense of always being watched, even in sleep. They speak little, but when they do, it's usually around firelight, about images they never understood, about symbols that returned night after night, about the slow realization that they weren't just dreaming for data, they were dreaming for someone else. Out here, people chew their food slowly, they walk without earbuds, they sleep with one eye half open, one arm over their ribs, not from fear, from habit. Sleep is rationed, not because it's scarce, but because it's sacred. A young girl in the camp hasn't dreamed in 3 years. She says the night is just dark, and no one presses her. No diagnostics, no EEG. She has allowed her emptiness, her rest, undisturbed. You spend 3 nights here. The air is dry, but clear. Your limbs ache from movement. Your mind feels heavy, unfiltered. There are no background prompts in your sleep, no anchor seeds. When you do dream, it comes on its own, slow, murky, and private. You wake up unsure of what happened, and for once, that uncertainty feels like a gift. On your final night, someone paints a symbol on your palm, an old desert sigil for silence, for your sleep, they whisper, before disappearing into the dark. When you return to the REM complex days later, the pod feels different. Calibrated, yes. Clean, efficient, but thinner somehow, as if a layer of your inner space had been airbrushed away. NeuraBloom greets you in silence. The mist resumes, and you begin again. But you remember now what it felt like to sleep without anyone listening, and some small part of you begins to wonder, was that the real dream? And so we return, slowly, from the rim of the desert where dreams are left untouched, back to the structured calm of the REM complex, where they are measured, shaped, and softly extracted. You're in the pod again. The lavender filtered mist hums around you. Everything is just as it was. Cool, clean, regulated. But something feels slightly changed. You remember now what it was like to sleep without being useful, to drift off without being watched, to wake up without anyone else owning the pieces of your night. It was a silence you didn't know you missed. And now, back in the grid, you sense that absence like a faint echo. In the world of 2088, sleep has become a kind of labour, not a burden, not painful, but purposeful, intentional. intentional. You lie down to work. You dream to contribute. And for many, that exchange feels fair, gentle, even beautiful. After all, you're not giving away your time, your energy, your body, just your imagination. But for others, there's a quiet unease, a question that doesn't quite go away. What happens when even your subconscious becomes productive? When every flicker of a dream is indexed, coded, priced? Tonight, we wandered through this question together. We lay in a dream pod outside Nairobi and followed your thoughts as they transformed into data. We met NeuraBloom, the AI that watches without judgment, translating metaphors into value. We explored the strange science that suggests dreams might sense future patterns before we can see them. And finally, we reached a place where all of that simply stops. In the desert, dreams are no one's business, not even your own, unless you choose to remember them. Sleep is rare, treasured, protected, not because it must be, but because it can be. And perhaps that's the real future. Not one path, but many. Some people will dream for the world, others will keep their dreams hidden, untouched, like letters never sent, and both will be part of the same sky. As you settle now into your own sleep, wherever and whenever you are, remember, the mind is not just a machine to be mapped. It is a place, a wandering, a flicker of something deeply yours. Let it be strange. Let it be silent. Let it be soft. This has been Midnight Futurist. Until next time, rest well.